So it is a few days later, and I have done some more testing. I went ahead and updated all of his drivers and made sure that a few other things were set correctly. And after lots of testing and playing some games and just trying to do some other stress tests and running ATA64 along with Unigine Valley benchmark for like 2 hours and a little bit more, together, fully trying to utilize all the system buses and everything, it did not fail once. So it is quite the stable machine. I did also try to update the BIOSes, but for whatever reason, it seemed to be quite difficult on his motherboard. The software BIOS update utility, which Gigabyte uses sometimes, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but I was trying to download that and install it, but it said there's some issues, and there was a way I could work around it and perhaps make it be installed, but I'm not sure if it has something to do with being Windows 10 or not, although the website never said anything about not working with Windows 10. Then I also try to use the QFlash utility, which is on this motherboard, and you can do it right from the BIOS and go right to QFlash, but it said that the QFlash utility was not up to date, which is kind of funny because I thought that was part of the BIOS, but perhaps not. So I couldn't update to a new BIOS, F8, F9, or even the beta F10, which I wasn't going to do. I was going to do F9. It wouldn't do it. So the other way to do it, maybe do the DOS way. And as I was doing more readings about F8 and F9, supporting some better overclocking and the newer Intel Devil's Canyon CPUs, I realized he doesn't have a Devil's Canyon CPU, and he is overclocking, but it wasn't that bad or that extreme. So I decided and opted not to do the BIOS update. So I really don't think that it contributed to any of his problems anyways. It was just something that I had thought about doing to be able to just eliminate another factor, but with all the tests I've run and everything, it's run quite stable for me. And so now the next step we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to do a thorough cleaning of all the parts. This will include dismantling and taking it all apart, which can be quite fun, but also can be a little bit tedious at times. But if you just enjoy doing it like I do, then it's fun anyways. So what I'm going to be doing is using a few tools. So if you're doing this yourself, I am going to be using a pivot driver, Black & Decker. This thing is fantastic. I use it for most of the outer type screws to make it a little bit quicker and a little bit faster. I would say be very careful and do not use this for things like on the motherboard or screws maybe perhaps that are a little close or internal to electrical components. Make sure everything is powered off before you do it and make sure you're grounded. But I do use this to sometimes speed up a little bit of the process. I do also have some isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol that is, and I'm going to use this to clean off probably some parts, things like the fans with the caked on dust, as well as some Q-tips to get into some tight places. And I also have a few general cleaning cloths that would be non-static forming, as well as my iFixit screwdriver set, which I use very faithfully with a magnetic head. And so we're going to take this thing apart. I'll probably do a time lapse of everything and mention anything else specifically breaking into the time lapse if necessary. So let's go ahead and get this thing spotless clean. Whoever thought that something so dirty could become so clean? So there's some thoughts I want to be able to conclude with to kind of wrap up the end of this video. And just to kind of go over what we did on the computer and what are some things to look for, perhaps if you're planning on doing something like this very similar yourself. Similarly? Yeah, sure. So when my friend dropped this off to me about a week ago now, he said he was having pretty much two main issues. And the first issue was that he was having some trouble when it booted. It was either going and kind of looping and then acted like it wanted to boot and then kind of restarted and then finally was successful the second time. And he says it wouldn't do it all the time, but it would do it sometimes. And he said even sometimes I think that you had to press the actual power button, turn it off, or a reset button, and then to do something to get it to actually boot up all the way, which very rightly so can be pretty annoying. And then the second problem was that sometimes when he was either playing a game or doing something regular, it really almost didn't matter, but it was more than likely one or the other. Just typical usage, maybe on the internet, or an extreme usage situation, things would lock up and freeze, and you'd actually get the stuttering audio sound, which to me happened a lot with graphical issues, you know, graphic intense things, which would be resulting in the graphics card having a problem. But I wasn't able to say that for sure without running it through tests and other things. So upon receiving the computer right off the bat and seeing its dirty condition, I simply took off the two main panels, and seeing that you could not even see the front-facing fans with the lights on those, which you should be able to very clearly see because of the LEDs, because there was such a thick wall of dirt on that front panel filter. So right off the bat, before even turning on the computer or even doing any testing, I decided I would just quickly kind of clean that off. And once I did that, I felt a little bit more comfortable about turning it on and using it, just simply because there was really almost no airflow coming from that, or if it was just pulling more dirt in and through. So once I did that, I continued to test the computer for the issues that he said he was having. Now, I was not able to actually replicate either one of the issues that he was having, unfortunately. Either way, I wasn't able to duplicate the problems that he was having exactly, but I did notice that his BIOS settings were incorrect. So at some point in time, he'd done something, maybe not knowing it, or maybe the computer itself had an issue, and when rebooting, set BIOS settings, not really to the optimal, but some things that were optimal, but others, like his memory profile was not even set to the XMP, it was set to a JDEC, and it was like high timings of like 10 or 11 with a 1600 speed memory. And he's got an 1866 kit, which of course is supposed to run at like a 9, 10, 9 timings, something like that. So first thing I did after running tests and trying to duplicate the problems just like he had it and was not able to do so, I went into the BIOS and went ahead and hit Optimize Defaults, along with changing his memory profile to the XMP profile. Just by doing that alone, I was able to get quite a performance boost in 3D Mark, and showed that slight but significant enough increase in performance for his games and other things. So that alone was an improvement for him. And then once establishing the fact that the system could run at the optimized defaults and run well, I then proceeded to take apart the system entirely and give it a very thorough cleaning. And in doing so, resulted in a very clean and actually almost new system. Sometimes it's hard to tell on the camera and the light, but things came out very, very well, and I'm very happy with how clean they look. A lot of things, there are still dust spots. I didn't actually dismantle the video card and clean underneath all the heat sinks and stuff, but as far as you can possibly go. So being very careful, I also used the Swiffers to clean off the fans, which is much more successful this time than it's ever been for me. So not having to really break out a lot of the rubbing alcohol to do that, I was able to do that sufficiently with those. And one of the components that get hindered pretty bad by dirt is fans. And I've lost many a fan to dust. Moment of silence. And not only does it ruin fans, but dust can also be bad for keeping heat within components. So not good in case you have systems that are high in performance, which is why a lot of these newer, nicer cases come with wonderful air filters that make it very easy to keep the case clean, so none of those problems exist. After cleaning the case and the other components very, very thoroughly, I then assembled everything back together and proceeded to do some more testing and benchmarking, trying to make his system faster in performance by doing some overclocking. Now, when I gave him this system to begin with, I gave it to him with a 4.2 gigahertz overclock. And since then, I decided maybe instead of doing that, I would try to do a little bit more of a fine-tuned one for him, but not going way out of my way to spend too much time. So I was able to get the CPU up to 4.4 gigahertz with a 1.2 volts. On this Haswell CPU, it was very common to try out 4.6 gigahertz at 1.2 volts to tell if you had a decent or a really good CPU for overclocking. This one was not able to hit that mark, unfortunately, but I was able to get 4.4 very well at 1.2 without an issue, and keeping the cache ratio on the Haswell chip at 45 as well. So that being 4.5 gigahertz on that cache ratio, as well as the CPU, results in some great performance with a memory profile at 1866. So he's got a pretty decent system right now, and with everything being pumped up and pushed, I was able to overclock the GPU, the GTX 770, about 125 megahertz, and so overall gives him a very nice performance boost and be able to help a system last that much longer for him until he upgrades to something even better. So remember, keep your computer case clean. If you have wonderful filters that are easily take off, and just do it, once a month. That's it, just once a month. Well, if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them as fast as I can. You can leave them in the comments down below, or feel free to send me a message, and as soon as I can, I'll get back to you with information that I hope I have the answer to. And I hope this video has been a help if anybody's been interested in cleaning their computer, or perhaps just taking it apart and putting it all back together again. Some people like to do that. I know I like to do that. It's not like it's that weird. Well, I think that's going to be it for today's video on Bobby's World of Tech. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Well, that's going to be on there to be recorded. Wow.